Today I'm going to be teaching you how to make a little charm. I'm going to be making a little key charm with a dangling tail out of Sculpey. This stuff right here. I get it in 8-pound boxes because I use it a lot, but you can find 1-pound boxes on Amazon for maybe $5 or so, maybe even less, I don't know. The tools you'll need, I like to have a set of pliers. Sometimes I'll use them to sculpt. The little edges are nice, but I also use them to attach them to jewelry, necklaces, and stuff. Sandpaper you'll want for smoothing it out when it's all done and baked. You'll also need a toaster oven. You can get them for like $20 at pretty much any like Target or Walmart or something. Just like whatever random things you can find that would be useful, like little tips to sculpt tiny details, some actual, you know, clay sculpting tools. Those are nice. But if you can like just find a mechanical pencil or something, that would work too. You'll need some wire to put little charm loops in. I like to use 20 gauge and 22 gauge. Those are some really nice. The 22 gauge is a little thinner. I don't know if that's going to focus. And the 20 gauge is thicker. It's nice and sturdy. I get these from firemountaingems.com, but I think you can find them on Amazon too. And I also like to have a little container to put my Sculpey bits in when I'm carving and sanding them, so it doesn't, you know, get everywhere, because that stuff's not fun to have everywhere, and I do, so yeah. An X-acto knife is good for carving when it's finished baking as well, and you can use it to sculpt like your other stuff. And there's like some textured bits you could use for like cloth or something if you wanted to sculpt cloth. Some nice texture bits. Just, you know, stuff you can find that looks like it would be a good sculpting tool. Probably is a good sculpting tool. Alright, so get these away to the main event. Sculpey. I use it's original Sculpey white because I paint mine, but you can get colored Sculpey. I find colored Sculpey a little harder to work with because sometimes it's a little more stiff and you have to work with it more to get it soft and pliable, but it's all up to you. You want to take some and just work with it a little bit to get it nice and squishy. Use the warmth of your hands and the motion. Get it all balled up. I'm going to be making it about an inch long without the tail, I think. Maybe a little less. I like working in tiny things, so get started with the head. A little bigger than that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this shape and then figure out how big I want the body to be in proportion. I want it to be like kind of like a chibi cat, like a cute, huge-headed thing. So I want a tinier body. Not that tiny. Alright, and that looks like it'll be pretty good. I can modify it as I go along. I'm going to make them separate and then attach them later. That way it'll be a bit easier to keep it from falling apart later. I'm going to be molding this later so that I can make copies of it. So sometimes I like to use, let's see if I have it over here, this beige, like, Sculpey 3, I think it's called. It's a bit stiffer, but that's really helpful when you're making things like heads that you want them to keep a certain shape. So sometimes I'll use this, but that's only for like mold masters, and it's really hard to work with, so I just like to use the regular stuff. what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the just basic shape and start forming it into a kitty head. So, get a little snout. Pretty simple. I'm going to want to make this kitty into like different colors and expressions and stuff, so I don't want to put too much detail on the face. I just want the basics so you know it's a cat no matter what I paint it as. So, nothing too complicated, just a little snout. Let's see. A little snout, just like that. Alright. Trying to make sure to smooth out any little fingerprints. Come along. You can sand those out later if you really want it though. But I find it's easier to sculpt when it's not baked than it is to like modify it after it's baked. So you'll want to keep that in mind as you sculpt, like, oh, I can sand it later, but it's really hard to like sculpt it and sand it after it's baked. So you want to make sure to do as much as you can in the squishy stage. So I'm going to make the ears now. What I want to do first is I want to find the right size little spheres that will go on, and I want to make them the same size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make little spheres first, about the size that I think the ears might be, and then get them to be even, so that way it's easier to make them symmetrical. Because if you start from the same amount of clay, then it's easier to make them look the same. Because symmetry is hard. Okay, so, and sometimes you'll want to do things that are kind of like a little bit bigger and attach them with wire. But since I'm going to be making a mold out of this, and when you make it out of the mold it's a lot sturdier since they're not attached. They're all one piece. When it comes out of the mold, I'm not going to worry about that right now. So, kind of squish it on there, make it triangular. Okay, so just going to smooth on the ears. Sure they're not positioned on the side of the face. It's okay to be a little rough. You can always refine it later, you know. It's pretty squishy, so smooth on the ears all the way around. And then, once you've got it all smooth, and you can't see any seam lines, just make sure you readjust the face so that it's cat-shaped again. And just keep playing with it until you're happy. Squish around the ears so they're kind of like to have they're like rounded in the back and then kind of flat in the front and pointy. It's okay if it looks kind of weird, because you can just keep working on it until you're happy with it. And you can take away some clay if you need to. Smooth it back to where you want it. Alright, now it's pretty much good. I'm gonna take my fingernail and put an indent inside the ears so they look a little bit more realistic. Kind of gonna be cartoony, so we don't want too much detail, but little details make it make it really good. So just a little indentation. Oops. And then you can drop it. That's always good. Indentation in the ear there. The same for the other side. Helps to have, you know, semi-long nails. But you can use a tool for this if you really wanted to. Or if you didn't have any nails. Just do that and then make sure it's nice and smoothed. Alrighty. And just keep working with it until you're happy with it. It's always the thing you gotta do with clay. So you just gotta keep working at it. Alright. And now we want to build up the face a little bit, so I'm going to take a ball of clay and split it in half so that you have 2 equal sized parts for the facial shape. And you just stick it on there and do a little fur ruff on the side there. Do it for both sides. Just smooth it out, just like with the ears. On all sides, so there's no seam. You can use ear tools. The ones with the thin parts or a mechanical pencil is good for getting in the necks and smoothing it out. And then you can go back in with your finger to make it blend in with everything else. Alright, once you've got everything attached and smoothed, just go back and make sure you're making everything all even and nice and pretty. And there's the head. Cute little kitty head. And then we'll want to work on the body next. So I need to remake my little bean shape. Just compare it to body. Want it a little smaller so it's nice and cute. And we're going to be adding limbs to it, so it'll gradually get a little bit bigger. So it's kind of like a bean, sort of semi-triangular sort of thing. Because we want to have a neck to be able to attach to the head later. And then take another ball and roll it out for the legs. Do the front legs first. Actually, no, do the back legs first. Roll it out fairly long. Because what we're going to do is, to make the haunches, we're going to take the thinner part and bend it back so it's like, that's the knee of the cat. And then the foot. And that's a really long foot, but we'll just trim it off right about here. Make it into a blunder shape. And then we want to smooth this over. See that? So it's kind of a solid piece there. And you take your body and you just find the side, what you want to be the side. Just squish it on there. Smooth it out. And then make sure it's going to sit, because you kind of want it to sit, so make sure the foot's all formed, and you can hang out a little, get like a dome shape on top, and then a flatter on the bottom. You can paint paw prints on the underside, that'll be cute. And then you do the same for the other one. Here, so I made the other leg really quick, and to make the front legs, you just do the same thing, but it's a little bit simpler. You just take a string of Sculpey and place it where you want it to sit, and then just wrap it around kind of. just a little bit of wraparound and pinch it off right about there. And then smooth it. You want to make sure that you have some neck to like squish so you'll be able to put the head on. So try not to squish the front leg too much, but just smooth it out. And then do the other leg. Try to make sure it's about the same thickness. And then it doesn't have cat hair on it. That's important. That's a little too thick, so. There we go. And just do the same as you did with the other one. Just smooth it out. Get it on there. And then before you actually, make sure everything's nice and smooth. Maybe do some little details. Make sure the back leg is smoothed on good too. There we go, that should do it. Little body, headless cat. And just sort of, don't like actually squish it on, but just so you know how it's going to fit, just sort of put it on there. So there we go. And put the feet up a little, so when you paint the little paws on, you can see them. Make sure it'll stand. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so I've gone ahead, I didn't like how big this was, so I made a smaller one. And I changed the facial shape a little bit, more cat-like. Now, I've already made the body. Just keep going until you get something you're happy with. It's okay if you make mistakes, just redo them. If you're going to be molding it, you want to try and get it as good as you possibly can, because it'll be duplicated a lot. So you'll want something that you're as happy with as you can be, because you'll be making a lot of them. Okay, so to attach it, the body to the head, you're going to want to take some of your wire. Usually I like to use the 20 gauge, because it's a bit thicker and a little bit more sturdy. So I'm going to take my pliers, they have little clippers on the inside, and just take, probably won't need that much, just a little bit, clip it, and then you're going to want to bend it. Since this is just our master that we're making the mold, just want to hook it, nothing too fancy. Hook it on both ends. Honestly, you could just do a straight piece of wire, but sometimes it's good to hook it so it doesn't fall apart. And then just stick it in there. Make sure the hook goes in. And you just have the straight bit sticking out. Make sure that it's going to go into the head and not poke out anywhere. And then just stick it on there. There we go. And then you'll blend the neck into the head. It's much easier with a tool, because you can get into the little nooks really well. Alright. Now that we have pretty much our finished charm, well, you still need to do the tail. And before we do that, I'm going to put our charm loops in. To do that, you're going to want to take some wire, use the 20 gauge again, and Don't need a lot. Probably about that much is good. So I'm going to get a longer piece. You want a fairly long piece because you're going to be making a loop in it. And the loop takes up more than you might think. So take our other pair of pliers. And take your round nose pliers, your wire, and you're going to just want to make a little loop. So you take it and you wrap it around one of the thinner parts. You don't need it to be too big. Wrap it around so you have a loop like that. Make sure it's as close to itself as you can get it so that it's not going to fall off of anything. And then take the base of the loop and bend it back a little so you've got like so it looks like it's in the middle of your thing. That makes it a bit more sturdy. And what I like to do is very important actually, is to bend the wire back and forth into either like a zigzag or a little loop on the end there, so that when you put it in your charm, it's not gonna like come out. You can bend it as many times as you want, but you want to at least do it once. And then you're gonna take it by the eye into your pliers, and then take your charm, figure out where you're gonna put it, right in the middle of the head, so it hangs down, and then just work it in without making too much of a mess. Get it as far in there as you can. Just like that. And since we're going to have a dangling thing, a dangling tail on this one, we'll want to do one in the butt as well. So I'm just going to make another eye loop. Another eye pin, I should say. It's a bit smaller. Since this is a master, we don't have to worry about them falling out too much since it's just our prototype kind of thing. And then, since I want to be able to have this be sitting as well as have it be a dangle charm, I'm going to see... Oh, another thing. The placement of this is pretty important, because when you have it and you attach your tail with a jump ring, it's going to hang down a certain way, so you'll want to insert it horizontally so that the eye is horizontal. And you'll see what I mean when I attach the tail itself, and make sure it doesn't interfere with it if you want it to sit normally, so about there is good. There we go. Where its tail would be. And there we go. Now it's ready for baking. I'm going to go ahead and bake it. A note on baking. I like to bake my charms for at least 10 minutes. It may depend on your oven how long and how much temperature, but generally I like to do either 215 or 250 degrees Celsius. You don't want to overbake it because it can warp the proportions, but you want to make sure that it's nice and solid. And actually, before you put it in the oven, just double check it and make sure everything's like you want it to be. And that anything like fingerprints or anything you smooth out or know that you're going to sand later. Make sure there's no like little dings in it that you might need to smooth out. And then it's ready for the oven. So do about 12 minutes for this guy. Alright, while we wait for the kitty to cool, let's make the tail. Just pretty straightforward. Make a little ball, roll it out to the right size. Make sure it's nice and smooth. I like to have a little a little thicker at the tip. Gives it a little more interesting asymmetry to it. I also like to do, once it's smooth, and just take it and curve it to like an S sort of shape. And then make an eye pin for it. And instead of going the opposite direction with the curves, I'm going to go the same so that it doesn't poke out anywhere. And just make a nice tiny little loop just so it doesn't fall out on accident. And then take the thinner part of the tail and just stick it in there, making sure you don't make the hole bigger than it needs to be. And then what you want to do is you want to have it vertical to the front. So if you want it to hang, if you want this to be like the front and this to be the side, then make sure that you can see the eye, see through it, because when the jump ring goes through, it'll hang like that, and then against the horizontal thing. And go ahead and bake that real quick. Okay, now the tail's all baked. I probably should have baked these, at the same time, but sometimes I don't think it. Okay, so what we want to do before we attach the two and make sure they're working is I'm just going to find parts where it needs a little bit of sanding with my sandpaper. The sandpaper is pea grade. I don't know exactly what the grit is, but it's a pretty fine grit. It's not that rough when you feel it. Just buy it pretty much wherever, I'm sure. Order it online, what have you. And just see if you can sand out any of the fingerprints or make whatever you need to make smooth. Especially where you're going to be painting detail like the face. That would need to be very smooth. And the tail as well. Pretty simple, so if you mess up you can just make another one, right? Alright, so to test the tail, make sure it's going to attach properly. We will need jump rings, I believe these are 4mm. I use them for everything. So I usually get them in like batches of 100, several batches. Just order them on Amazon. So I'll take just one jump ring to attach the tail. And you take your 2 pairs of pliers. You gotta find the tiny little seam in the jump ring and put it on the top, and then just open it up like that. What you never ever want to do is open it outwards, because that will strain the jump ring and it won't be as strong. You always want to do it like this way, in a sort of twisting motion, as opposed to a opening motion. So take that and take the bigger part, usually take the bigger thing first, and hook it into the tail thing, and then just take your tail, slip it on so they're dangling, and then close it up. May take a couple tries. Sometimes I'll drop it before I get it in there. And sometimes you'll have to just take one pair of pliers and squeeze it together to make sure it's gonna go back to where you can't really see the seam anymore. There you go. Make sure it's not gonna fall off. No gaps. And there it is, dangly too. And you got your charm with the dangly too. My next video, I'm going to show you how to make a mold and do it properly. So, there we go. There's your little charm. Thanks for watching.